think we're good to go. From the studio, in the bonus room, above the garage, the north side of Cary, the foot of Mount Belzoni, it's a Triangle Talk Show. All that time and I couldn't squeeze it in. It's the Triangle Talk Show. Oh, I'm supposed to put that up when I say it's the Triangle Talk Show. Episode 34 is going to be some politics. October 27th, 2018. The voter guide. From me? Really? Voter guide from me? Gary Pierce, the snowflake. Get rid of all the titles. This is going to be, I think this is going to be an audio-ish episode. I'm going to intend to make it that way. Because I don't have things set up for doing the video very well. So probably mostly audio, but there are going to be a lot of websites I'm going to be putting up and looking at. And so as I do that, it's all going to be linked on the Triangle Talk Show website. So, the very first thing I got to do is visual. Dessert first. Before we get to the snooze-inducing voter guide. Maybe it won't be snooze-inducing. Maybe I'll be able to be entertaining. I don't know. I didn't design it to be entertaining, but I'm going to try on the fly to provide some entertainment. But first, just some fun. I'm a newspaper fan. I've been a newspaper fan for a long time. Back in Chicago, the Chicago Tribune sometimes. I had a newspaper out. I delivered newspapers back when I was a kid. By the way, I just turned 69. Newspapers are for old people. So these days I get the News and Observer online, the digital version. I also get the Washington Post online, the digital version. I like the Washington Post's online application better than the News and Observer. It's really good. But I subscribed to it when they had a deal for $50 a year. My first year will be $50. My second year, if I can't talk them into a deal again, it's going to be $100. The News and Observer is a little more expensive. It's like $120 or so for the digital version. Don't need any paper clogging up the driveway or piling up the side of the room. So I try to read the paper. Once in a while I get a couple days behind. I put it on my tablet. Got a Samsung Galaxy Tab S3. It's now a generation old. And reading the paper works pretty good on that. Either off of the website, or my favorite way to read it is to get a PDF of the, for the News and Observer, a PDF of the printed edition. So it looks just like the newspaper looks in print, which is not ideal because stories start on the front page and then, you get a couple of paragraphs on the front page and then they boot it off to page 5 or page 10. And by the time I flip down to that and get to the continuation of the story, I've forgotten what it's all about. So I got to go back to the first page, see where I left off, and then come back. You look at the newspaper on the website, you don't have those problems. But for some reason, I still prefer the newspaper in its layout. Excuse me. It's a phlegmy night. I prefer the newspaper in its printed layout, but I don't want the printed version. I don't want to take it to lunch and have it knocking my drink over and flopping out into the aisle. I'm sitting at a table at Subway. This episode of the Triangle Talk Show is brought to you by Subway. It is not. One of the things that I like about newspapers, that I like about reading the newspaper, again, eat dessert first, is the comics. Does anybody admit to really liking the comics? Is it a guilty pleasure? the News and Observer has discovered, and I think every newspaper has discovered, if they do anything to change the comics, they are going to hear about it. They drop a comic, they're going to have a lot of pissed off readers that will express their opinion, probably more in percentage than they get from any of the news stories. And if they add a comic, it's going to, get carefully scrutinized. Maybe it'll be okay, maybe not. But I like the comics. I read almost all of them. There's a couple that I've decided are a waste of time, a waste of the 10 or 15 or 20 seconds to scan them. So I skip right by them. I don't look at the Peanuts anymore because that's really old. Skip Family Circus. We don't have Mary Worth and Rex Morgan in the News and Observer. Man, are those old carryovers from ancient history. But they've had others and they've dropped some. There's something about the comics that I wanted to mention. Something that I've noticed for a long, long time. Something that tickles me, and I don't know if it'll tickle you, and you may just think I'm weird. Once in a while, two strips in the comics on the same day will have something coincidentally, unless there's a conspiracy going on, in common. Something, a drawing, a theme, some significant dialogue. And I'll notice as I'm going through the comics, I say, wait a minute. Garfield said the same thing as the guys on Pearls Before Swine. Same, like drawing at a panel, same dialogue. Could be anything. And so what I call that, when that happens, what I call that is comic convergence. And there are a couple of levels of it. It can be just two comics somewhere across the page, a similar picture, something like that. That's a basic comic convergence. It could happen where they are really similar. Lots of words together, almost identical drawing. Sorry. And, that's another level of comic convergence. It could be two strips that are adjacent on the page, one right after the other, one above the other typically. And they have some convergence, and that is really unusual. And that happens more often than you think it should. And there hasn't been a lot of comic convergence lately. I've been noticing it since I started doing the show. Haven't seen a lot of it, but suddenly I started seeing more of it this month. And I brought up two strips on 2 different days that had some convergence. I thought I would show you. And you can pay attention too. This is from Wizard of Id. This is the beginning of the month, I think October 8th. Got 2, for the audio audience, it's 2 witches, green hag type witches with the black dresses and pointy witches hats. And they're looking over at 2 kids in a sandbox who are slapping each other. The dialogue is slap, 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 slap. The nanny or the mom or whoever's in charge of the kids is going, knock it off, you two. But the witches are saying, oh, look, food fight. Get it? Witches eat little kids. Gingerbread house, stuff like that. Okay. And then down in these did not have adjacency convergence, just some similarities. This is Argyle sweater, 2 witches. Black witches' dresses, a little kind of purple on this monitor. Pointed hats. Got some Mickey Mouse hats sitting on a table, some clothes strewn about. And the dialogue this is a single panel strip. Well, Griselda, I just went back to the kitchen for a snack, and it looks like somebody ate the 3 Mouseketeers I was saving for later. 3 Mouseketeers being children Mouseketeers, because the clothing and the Mickey Mouse hats. Okay, so the convergence was the witches and that they were talking about eating children. And I know you might be saying, well, Halloween is right around the corner. But it wasn't when this was produced. This was from October 8th. So, okay, you know, October is Halloween month. Maybe there's some reason for it. Comic convergence doesn't count if there's a really good reason for multiple strips to be having the same storylines. You know, as we're getting to Halloween, they're all about Halloween. That's not comic convergence. Okay, next. A couple days later, the Mutts cartoon. Three panel strip. First panel is just the word crash with the not lightning, you know, just chaos around it. The word crash. Second panel, the mom looking at a vase that has been knocked over, going, ah! And a dialogue box going off screen saying gangway, and down on the floor off of a coffee table or an end table is an accent table, is a vase with flowers knocked over, water spilling out of it. And then a cat in the third panel, cat running up the stairs, running away. He says, I'm transcending this plane. Getting out of here. Pickles. Same day. Cat standing up on a counter. There's a plant in a potted plant. The cat goes, where did this come from? Second panel, cat boots the plant off the counter, crashes onto the floor. So we got cat, we got plant, there were flowers in a vase, crashed onto the floor. The last panel in Pickles says, you can have a cat or you can have houseplants, but you can't have both. That's not part of the convergence. The convergence is just cat, plant, crash. And those were both on Thursday, October 11th. And that strip was actually part of a series of from Pickles. I'm showing another panel from another day that about the cat and the houseplant. That's been part of a series. But you see the point. And now I just feel stupid about it. Because, I mean, who cares? Let's do a voter guide. I don't think this is going to be a short, compact show. I think I'm going to get lost. I think I'll screw things up as I go through my script here. I'm not going to edit anything because I don't. Unless it gets really bad. There's going to be a lot of websites that I'll show in this video. And toward the end, there's going to be a couple of commercials. But I'll have links to all of it on the Triangle Talk Show website. So if you're listening on the audio, I don't think you're going to need any of this stuff. And I'll try to describe it pretty well. I will try. Our first stop, well, let me explain what the whole deal is. I haven't voted yet. We're in the middle of early voting. I haven't voted yet, mostly because I couldn't figure out who I wanted to vote for. I know the top of the ticket pretty well. Congress, state, senator, and representative. But you get much below the bottom of the ticket, and I don't know the candidates. I don't know the issues. I don't know very much about anything. And my typical performance in the voting booth and situations like that, been voting for a long time, would be to go make the votes for the top of the ticket. I might vote a straight party, but there are candidates for things that don't have a party attached to them here. So I feel bad whenever I do that, but the time it takes to do the research and figure things out, just haven't put in that kind of effort and wanted to get there and vote. And because it was really important to vote the top of the ticket stuff, whether it's an election like this, which is what they call a blue moon or an off year. There's no national office, no president. There's no statewide office except for one Supreme Court judge. There's no governor, no senators. The biggest races are Congress and in our state legislature. So these are low turnout elections, and I don't know very much about it. So I wanted to do this show and get a little deeper into things and learn what was going to be on the ballot, study it for myself, and then do a show about it. So that's where we are. All right. So our first stop is to get a sample ballot, so I can see just exactly what I'm going to confront when I end up at the polling place, and that's probably going to be on Monday. So we go to wakegov.com, their voter information website. I won't read the whole URL. It's going to be on the website, the triangletalkshow.com website. But what I'm going to do is just click this My Voter Info. I can get a lot of information from that. I can see if I'm registered. I can find my polling place, party affiliation, verify my address, see the sample ballot, things like that. So I'm going to click that voter information button, and I need to fill out some things. I need to put in my name. Well, Google is handy. It's got all that stuff in there, and my year of birth and the county. This will look up anybody that matches these criteria. And if you don't put everything in, I did this once before. I looked up somebody who shares my name to see if they were in there, and they were. But with this much data, I think it's going to come back with just me. Clicking search. Yeah, there's one voter in Wake County whose name is Gary James Pierce and lives in Cary. There's just me. So this is going to be my stuff. County is Wake. I'm an active voter. Sorry, still phlegmy. I am unaffiliated. I am a white guy. I am about the whitest guy you'll ever meet. I am a white guy. Not Hispanic, not Latino. I am male. I registered the first day I got into North Carolina, January 1st, 1990. Went and got a driver's license and I think registered to vote at that point. And over on this side, you can see the details of where I vote and what all the stuff is. I vote at the Cary Academy over on Harrison. Here's where the sample ballot is, but before I do that, I want to show you that how much stuff there is about me. You can see all the voting that I've done since they started putting this data on the web. The first election that it shows is the general election in 1994. I probably voted before that since I was registered, but you can see that the bottom three of these are called legacy, that just, stuff that somebody entered in. It probably didn't go back any farther than that. I mean, early 1990s were not a serious computer era for a lot of enterprises with the state. And then you can see that I voted in a lot of general elections, some municipal, and not a lot of primaries until 2008, and then I started picking up primaries. So maybe I was slack. Mostly in person, and then they started the one-stop, well, they call it one-stop. This is the early voting. So then more early voting than in person. And you can also see, going back to the previous page, you could see that I'm unaffiliated, which means that most primaries I can pick up a ballot from either the Republican or the Democratic primary. And they don't have to do that in North Carolina. A party can close their vote in the primary so that you have to be registered in that party to be able to vote in the primaries. In the time that I've been here, neither the Republicans nor the Democrats have closed their primary. So I voted a Democrat, and in the primaries you have to choose which ballot you're going to take. You can't. If you choose a Democratic ballot, you're not voting in the Republican primary, just the Democratic primary. If you choose a Libertarian ballot, you're not voting Democratic or Republican. You're wasting your vote. So, most of the time I would take a Democratic primary ballot, but in 2016 in the primary, that was the year that Trump was running, I picked a Republican ballot so that I could vote, because I was pretty confident that Hillary Clinton was going to take North Carolina, and I wasn't strongly drawn to either Hillary or Bernie Sanders. I thought Hillary would probably be more electable. I could easily be wrong about that, as it turns out. But I would be happy with either one. So I took a Republican ballot so that I could vote for someone other than Donald Trump. Because at that point, he was starting to come on. And I wanted a vote to be against him. So the guy that I voted for, and I think it was Kasich, the Ohio governor, I didn't vote for him because I thought he was a great candidate. I voted for him because I thought he had some potential to beat Trump. He didn't in North Carolina or any time. And my strategy, my one-person strategy anyway, went nowhere. But the main point is I did make a Republican primary ballot. You can't see here who I voted for. And in the general elections, you can't tell anything other than that I did vote. This does show that you did vote. And a quick interesting aside, Donald Trump was very surprised to discover that there were records that showed when he did and did not vote. It surprised the heck out of him. And most people, if they haven't been to this site, public site, most people would get surprised. So, gonna look at my sample ballot, and we'll spend a lot of time with this. So there's the sample ballot, and this is just what it will look like, except for on the word sample ballot on the left. That won't be there when I go to vote. Otherwise, it's going to look just like this. So let's see. Before we get into that any farther, just some assistance in figuring out who's who, what's what, and what I want to do. The News and Observer has a web page that I forget if they call this full coverage or if I just called it full coverage. Let me put this up here and see. Yeah, they call it full coverage. Here in one place is our full coverage. I think I can make that go away. Yeah. Our full coverage of the midterm elections in North Carolina. This will provide a lot of useful information. It will show all of the races, and candidate comments. This page doesn't have endorsements, but it is mostly links to stories that relate to one race or another. So, and the amendments and stuff like that. It's not totally comprehensive, but it's got about everything you need. It's also got, except for their endorsements are elsewhere. It's also got this database at the bottom. It's a adjustable database. It shows the candidate, the contest type, congressional, district attorney, judicial. It shows what district, it shows what party the candidate is in. It shows where they live. And then you can, and it shows their responses to a series of questions, a questionnaire that they sent out. The different questions depending on what the office is. So, for example, I'm looking at David Price. He's right there at the top. And they show some specific yes or no type questions, like, will you support Medicaid expansion? Yes, you would. Will you support more restrictions on firearms? Yes. Will you support more restrictions on abortion? No. Will you support allowing North Carolina's ban on anti-discrimination laws to expire? Yes, he will. That's the old House Bill 2 controversy and compromise thing, I think. Got that law that bans. Maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. Will you support an independent redistricting commission? Yes, he will. And then 2 top issues that you'll work on if you are elected. This is their opportunity to do a little bit of short essay. And so that's what you'll see in the database. And everybody's in there. So if you want a quick reference to a candidate for something, you can find it. So that's the News and Observer's full coverage website. And once again, I'll have that in the Triangle Talk Show's website. Okay, so back to the sample ballot. At the top of the ballot, it's pretty easy. It's the U.S. House of Representatives. I'm in District 4, western part of the triangle, and the candidates are Barbara Howe, Libertarian, Steve Van Leur, the Republican, and David Price, the Democrat. District 3 is safely gerrymandered, a Democratic district. I don't even think that David Price is running ads. I think pretty good chance he's going to get elected. They are really running ads over in District 2. I don't vote there. It's on the east side of the triangle. George Holding and Linda Coleman are slugging it out over there. And I remember their names without prompting now. I know who they are. It takes a while sometimes to remember who we're talking about. District 2 is gerrymandered Republican, but that's not a lock. The polls are pretty even for District 2, and I think the race is going to be decided by turnout, who can get people out to the polls. The congressional races are important because we progressives, we liberals, if you're not with me, if you're not with me, you're against me. If you're on the other side, then, make appropriate adjustments in my language. The congressional races are important because we might flip the House. It's a pretty good chance that all the polls, all the predictions seem to think that there is a very good chance that the House will become Democratic. More than 50% of the congressmen and women will be Democratic. Right now, it's fairly heavily Republican. Pretty good chance, but remember 2016. Pretty good chance Hillary Clinton was going to be elected, so that didn't happen. And that's what makes things important over in District 2 is Holding is the Republican. He's the incumbent. And if Linda Coleman wins, well, that's one more congressional seat that changes from Republican to Democrat, leading in that direction. North Carolina can't help the Senate, and the conventional wisdom out there is the Senate probably won't flip, but the chances that it will is greater than 0. It's possible, but it's not likely. North Carolina can't help. We are not electing any U.S. senators this cycle. The state Senate and House elections may be even more important to North Carolina than our U.S. congressional election. That's important. But the state Senate and House may be even more important. And let me dial down to what's going to happen in my district. I will do that if I can make the... make things cooperate here on my screen. All right. All the seats in the legislature, both Senate and House, are up for election every 2 years. all the districts have been gerrymandered to favor Republicans. That means some districts, like mine, let's see, Senate District 16, and to maybe a lesser extent, House of Representatives District 49. All the districts have been gerrymandered to favor Republicans, but some districts, like mine, are packed with Democrats because they can't make them all Republican. Many, many more districts are drawn favoring Republicans. And both the North Carolina Senate and House are heavily Republican at this point. Even a big blue wave is not expected to flip either house in North Carolina. But we could break the Republican supermajority in both houses. And that would stop Republicans from being able to override Governor Cooper's vetoes. So right now, if he vetoes some legislation, and the leaders in the House and the Senate for North Carolina really want that legislation, they can probably get the votes to override it, just keeping their party in line. So I guess the important thing is to elect enough Democrats to prevent that supermajority and let Cooper have some successful vetoes. And, maybe, slim chance, if there's really a big blue wave, slim chance of taking one of those houses and flipping it. But nobody's really thinking that's too likely. I got some of the information from these guys, from the Flip NC website. It's a website put together by Indivisible. And even they, it's a progressive group. Even they are not encouraged about the idea of flipping either house, even though they call it Flip NC. They're not really likely to do it, but they will talk about the idea of, what's really behind the idea of at least giving the governor a viable veto. So you can check out their website. What about that gerrymandering? How about that gerrymandering? All right, let me give you a little history lesson. In 2010, the Republicans used their new majorities in the North Carolina legislature to draw maps of new districts that unfairly favored Republicans. And they did that for both the U.S. House and the state legislature. Over the past decade, Democrats have challenged the maps in court, and they've been somewhat successful. They've been redrawn a couple times. The U.S. District Court declared that the Republican district maps were unconstitutional, first as racial gerrymanders and then later as partisan gerrymanders. And that partisan thing is a new concept. The Republicans thought a partisan gerrymander was okay. It's beginning to turn out that maybe it's not so okay. We'll see. Still in flux. The Republicans appealed the district court. I believe it was for the middle of North Carolina. We talked about that before. The Republicans appealed that to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court heard gerrymandering cases from several states. I believe that they were Pennsylvania and Maryland. And the Supreme Court sent the North Carolina case back to the district court without deciding. The challenge was they wanted the district court to show that the maps affected voters in every district, every individual voting district, and not generally the whole state. The district court said, yep, it did. Change the maps. The Republicans appealed to the Supreme Court again. That appeal is pending. The district court wanted to order new maps, but then they agreed that there's not enough time. This was, I guess, back in September. They agreed there was not enough time to do that for this election. So maybe maybe we will get new maps for 2020. That's going to be in the hands of the legislature and the courts, and we'll see what happens. District Court, the U.S. District Court keeps trying. The Republicans keep on stalling, kind of hoping that there will be a good court-mandated map in place for the 2020 election, because that's when we will elect not just Congress, but the state legislature. That's when we will elect state senators and representatives. And those people will be the ones that draw new maps after the 2020 census. We draw redistricted maps for officially every 10 years after there's a census. Census happens on the aughts, the 10-year point. And always draw up new maps, because that's when we know how many more people or less people have moved to the state and what part of the state they live in, so that the maps can be drawn up to apportion the right number of voters and the right number of legislatures in the right places, sort of. That's the process that can be corrupted by gerrymandering, by drawing them carefully. You don't move people from one place to another, but you draw them carefully so that the lines around a bunch of Democrats in a few places and around a bunch of Republicans in many more places, that can be done. It is quite possible. Okay, so 2020, whatever gets elected, who's ever controlling the legislature, they draw the maps again. If it's the Democrats, they have pledged to support nonpartisan redistricting. Some Republicans have too. Nonpartisan redistricting is nobody draws the maps for partisan advantage. They are drawn evenly, and you don't have those odd-shaped districts. There are considerations that have to go into how things are drawn, but the idea is that when you're done, the map leaves you with fair representation. So say if the state was just about half Republican and half Democrat, then the legislature would be just about half Republican and half Democrat. North Carolina, in fact, is pretty close to half Democrat and half Republican. But in the state legislature, we have big majorities of Republicans in both Senate and House. And in the U.S. Congress, we have 10 Republicans and 3 Democrats. If that doesn't sound like nearly 50-50 to you, well, that's the point. Drawing nonpartisan district maps, nonpartisan redistricting is not as easy as it sounds. And I draw as my source for that comment something called the Gerrymandering Project from a website and a podcast group called 538.com. And it's written out. They couldn't get the domain 538. So it's FIVETHIRTYEIGHT 538.com. Don't worry. All that's going to be on the Triangle Talk Show website. Earlier this year, late last year and ending early this year, they had a series of podcasts they called the Gerrymandering Project. And they did podcasts about several states. North Carolina was one of them at one point. And we're looking at the idea of where gerrymandering was taking place, how it was taking place. When they looked at North Carolina, they only looked at the racial gerrymandering because that was what was going on then. Now we're also talking about partisan gerrymandering. And they also looked at some states that had attempted some versions of nonpartisan legislative map drawing. And I'm looking at the one right now from Arizona. They said, want competitive elections? So did Arizona. Then the screaming started. Let me play a little bit of that. We're not going to get the heart of it because I haven't picked that out.
In today's episode of the Gerrymandering Project, we're talking about competitive elections. And speaking about competition, Blue Bottle Coffee is knocking that requires officials to draw competitive districts when making political maps. But how competitive, and at what cost? In 2011, it fell to one woman to decide. And amid partisan uproar and threats to her safety, she learned that there's an awful lot of disagreement.
And talk about political battles. There's a big battle being played out at the state capitol.
Okay, so I found this series fascinating and very informative. And if you get to the very end, the last podcast in the series, it's kind of bleak. All the way through, they're not promising that this is going to be real possible. But the very last podcast that was released January 11th of this year, earlier this year, the title is, "It's Probably Not Possible to End Gerrymandering." So very difficult to actually draw totally nonpartisan lines for a variety of reasons I'm not going to go into now. And then probably not possible to totally end gerrymandering. Again, our Democrats have, many of them, most of them have pledged to support nonpartisan redistricting. That may be harder than you think it is. And once they get in power, what do you think they'll do? Maybe they'll gerrymander. Maybe they won't. First of all, the Democrats have gerrymandered since the beginning. So have the Republicans. The big difference in 2010 was computers and algorithms and programs that made it a much more precise science. The Republicans got really good at it. Democrats did too in a few places, but not in North Carolina. So the Democrats may say, "Oh, okay, we've got to take this advantage. We've got to take advantage of this advantage and do what the Republicans did if we get a Democratic majorities in the 2020 election." But I think probably they will even try. I don't think the Republicans would, if the Republicans hold the House in 2 years, House and Senate in 2 years. North Carolina, House and Senate. Gets confusing. Okay, so the bottom line, elect Democrats. Of course I was going to say that. The News and Observer has issued a blanket endorsement for Democratic candidates for the North Carolina House and Senate. Normally, they find a few Republicans here and there that they can support. And in an editorial, well, I guess I've got that link here. Let me bring it up, see what it says. Okay. Break the GOP stranglehold on the legislature and North Carolina. So normally they come up with a few Republicans, and this year that there are some that they would support, except that the Republicans have that stranglehold, that veto-proof majority in both the state Senate and state House. And the News and Observer thinks it's important enough to break that they are giving a blanket endorsement to Democrats running for state House and Senate, just period. Okay, back to my ballot. Where did my ballot go? I am in Senate District 16. It's a three-way race. This was one of the districts that was redrawn in the last court-ordered redrawing, and it turns out that there was no incumbent. So it's a three-way race that's wide open. Nobody's got incumbency. It is one of those districts that was gerrymandered Democrat. So Wiley Nickel pretty likely to win. And we don't do polling at this level, so it gets a little bit hard to tell. I am in House District 49. It's easy to see who is running in these districts. And their party labels are all right there. So Cynthia Ball would be the Democrat there. So moving down the ballot, prosecutorial office. There we go. Also listed by political party in Wake County. And sorry, I'm being Wake County centric a lot here because that's pretty much all I've had time to do the research on. There's just one prosecutorial office being elected. District attorney for District 11. I guess that's mostly or all Wake County. I'm not sure. The Democrat is Nancy Freeman. News and Observer has endorsed her for district attorney. Again, the Triangle Talk Show is aimed at the whole Triangle area. There's, maybe 5 counties that are involved in this. I'm in Wake County, so what I see on my ballot are the county offices. And again, pretty much all I had time to research. So next time I'll send the vast Triangle Talk Show staff out looking at everything else. So continuing here with Wake County, we got the Board of Commissioners. The News and Observer hasn't endorsed Wake County Board of Commissioners yet. Indie Week, used to be the Independent, now it's Indie Week. They have endorsed a lot more candidates in a lot more races. And what I'm showing on the screen is, first of all, not just Wake County, Durham, Orange. Let's see, what do they have? Durham, Orange, and Wake. Okay, so that's who they're aiming at. Not going as far as Johnston or Chatham or Nash. But they have issued endorsements for most of the offices in all of those counties, and they've endorsed all the Democrats running in the Wake County Commissioners election, at least those that have opposition. Not all of them do. There are 7 districts in Wake County for county commissioners. We as individuals actually vote for commissioners in all 7 districts. Let me get that right thing up there. So if you look at the ballot, we're seeing a race in District 2, a race in District 3. It's on my ballot. Well, the race in District 3 has just one candidate. I get back up to the top of the middle column. Board of Commissioners District 4, contested. District 5. So, in other words, I get to vote in every district, even though I guess I must live in just one of them, and I don't remember which one. Did this tell me? The My Voter info? County Commissioner, I am in District 3. Okay, but I get to vote. I get to vote in every district. I don't know why it's that way. Some reason for it being that way. There are 2 county commissioner races that have Democrats running that are not opposed. 5 of them have opposition from Republicans. Okay, the next office is the Clerk of Superior Court. It's a county office. News and Observer has not made an endorsement yet. Indie Week endorses Democrat Blair Williams. Indie Week is that left-leaning, progressive, commie pinko website, former newspaper. You can expect that they're going to endorse the Democrats, of course. Sheriff, the sheriff's race. No News and Observer endorsement that I've found yet, but they do have a deep story on the candidates. And let me dial that up and put it over here for you. Okay, Wake County Sheriff faces plenty of criticism from his challenger ahead of the election. Donnie Harrison has been the sheriff for a long time, and I have voted for him in the past. He's one of the folks that the News and Observer has endorsed, and I kind of followed their endorsements. They endorsed him for good reasons. But they're not endorsing anybody yet. They may, during the course of this week, add that endorsement. Harrison is retiring after the next term if he wins. And as the article brings up, there's several issues for his challenger, Gerald Baker, that I like Baker on. Baker gets the Indy Week endorsement. So I'm likely to not vote for Donnie Harrison again this time and switch to Gerald Baker. The News and Observer kind of likes him as a candidate. So, Wake County Sheriff. Going to take a swig of soda pop. North Carolina Supreme Court Associate Justice. Let's look over here. First of all, on the ballot, it says that no primaries for judicial office were held in 2018. The information listed by each of the following candidates' names indicates only the candidate's party affiliation or unaffiliated status on their voter registration at the time they ran for office. Remember, you saw my unaffiliated status in my voter registration. Well, that's what you'll see for these guys. Let's start with the North Carolina Supreme Court Associate Justice. This is the one statewide race. And it's a weird three-way race between Barbara Jackson, the Republican, Chris Anglin, also a Republican, and I'll put a question mark at the end of that. I mean, it says he is. It says right there, Republican. Not the Las Vegas magician. That's Chris Angel. Chris Anglin. And Anita Earls, who is the Democrat. So what's the story with this? Well, Anglin was accused by the Republicans of changing his party. He had been a Democrat. And joining the race just to split the Republican vote. So look at this. There's 2 Republicans running and 1 Democrat. It seems likely that's exactly what he's going to do. It was the Republicans that decided to make this race partisan by including party labels. The past, for a while, court ballots didn't list party affiliation. This has gone back and forth. When Democrats have been in power, they typically make the races nonpartisan, at least in terms of labels. And when Republicans take power, they tend to restore those labels. And I guess there's a reason for that. The labels seem to elect more Republicans than not having a label. But it backfired this time. Didn't it? The Republicans also, as you saw, canceled the judicial primaries. What the news stories I'm reading say is that they expected that the incumbent, Barbara Jackson, the Democrat, Barbara Jackson, the Republican, would be the only Republican. Usually not going to be challenged. The party establishment pretty well tamps down any attempts to make a challenge like that. That would typically happen back in the primary, but no primary. So the Republicans were pretty much expecting that Barbara Jackson would be the only Republican and that a bunch of Democrats would pile into the race to dilute the Democratic vote. And again, if that happens in a primary, well, one winner shows up, but no primary. So they're expecting the ballot that we're looking at here to have a bunch of Democrats on it. But that's not what happened. Anita Earls was the only Democrat to run. Somehow, within the smoke-filled back room of the Democratic Party, they figured, got everybody on board and said, we've got a chance to win this if we can stay coordinated. It's that joke. Are you a member of an organized political party? No, I'm a Democrat. Okay. Somehow Anita Earls got the nod, became the only Democrat running. And then this Chris Anglin guy filed as a Republican. claims he's not a spoiler, quacks like a spoiler, walks like a spoiler. It's working. He's actually polling higher than Jackson in the news stories that I've read because, well, who knows? The voting public doesn't seem to know most of what I just told you. The only speculation that I got was, maybe it was just he's a guy and people are voting gender. I don't know. But he's polling a little higher, and Anita Earls is polling well ahead of any of them. So looks like the Republicans' plan, if that's indeed what it was, looks like that's backfired. In terms of, and I haven't talked very much about issues here in terms of issues. This is another case of judicial candidates claiming to just interpret the law as they talk about what they would do, but they clearly hold partisan positions. And I agree with Anita Earls' partisan position, so she gets my vote. North Carolina Court of Appeals, Seat 1. Again, party labels make it easier to cast a vote. They don't say anything about a candidate's qualifications. That, figuring out their qualifications, would take forever to research, so I didn't. They've all got statements from every one of them in that News and Observer database. It's kind of sad knowing that each of the candidates have a lot invested in their education and their careers, and this simple step of voting for them will be decided by a small number of voters, most of whom don't really know anything about them. But, they know what they signed up for, so candidates can expect this, but it's just kind of sad that, they have gotten to this point in their careers and they're going to be elected or not based on, I'm not sure who to vote for. I'll mark something. I'll do it by party. Indy Week endorses all the Democrats. News and Observer, no endorsement yet. Let's see. Need to move over here on the ballot. So we get to let me see. Am I this is one place where I've got myself confused. I'm saying Superior Court judges, and I'm not finding that. I'm confused. Let me deconfuse myself. I guess I need to find Superior Court judge. On the ballot, and it should be here. I've done the appeals. I'm supposed to find Superior, and I'm not seeing it. Why not? Oh, there. There it is. Like I promised I was going to get confused, and that's where I did. But it would be hard to go find this spot to edit without spending a lot of time, so I'll just leave that in. Okay, so in Superior Court judges, my sample ballot has me choosing between two candidates in District 10D. Wake County is in Superior Court, District 10, which is further divided into 6 somethings. They're labeled A through F. So District 10, A through F. And I'm in D. And the race in North Carolina Superior Court Judge District 10D for Seat 1. And I don't know what Seat 1 is all about. I have no idea what they mean by Seat 1. but Superior Court Judge, District 10D, Seat 1. 2 guys are running, listed for Democrat and unaffiliated. And, I get the party label. That'll help me decide. There is something else that can possibly help me decide in these cases. And let me put that on the screen for you here. It is the North Carolina Bar Association. They have something called a judicial performance evaluation. And they have that for all candidate judges in the state and for both the Superior Court and District Court. And yeah, I'm showing you the website. You can look at how they did it. They've got a spot for methodology, then the listing for Superior Court, the listing for District Court, and they got one for Special Superior Court. That's not on my ballot. I'll once again put this on the Triangle Talk Show website, and you can go look at this stuff for yourself. For my little corner of Wake County, I'll dial up Superior Court, and I got to dial way down to page 10 here. Almost there. All right. Close. There we go. District 10B. There we go. District 10D. Wake County. So, looking at our 2 guys, Keith Gregory and Matt Van Sickle, and what the NC Bar Association is doing is they have surveyed their membership, lawyers, and asked, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 questions. Does the candidate have appropriate courtroom and trial experience? They demonstrated knowledge of the law, procedures, and evidence. They capably analyze legal and factual issues. Are they able to serve in a fair and impartial manner? Do they treat all in the courtroom with courtesy and respect? Do they show patience and self-control? Do they communicate clearly and concisely? Are they prepared and attentive in the courtroom? Are they respectful of court time? And then the lawyers rate them on a scale from poor, average. It's got 2 columns for average. I don't know why. Then good and then excellent, and then they'll do a combined good and excellent score. So Keith Gregory, who is the Democrat, Matt Van Sickle, who is the, I think I said Republican, but I don't think it was. No, unaffiliated. He is not a Republican. Let me change my notes to you. There we go. So Keith Gregory, his good and excellent combined scores for all of those questions are high 70s, low 80s. And Matt Van Sickle, a little more over the map. He's got some high 60s. He's got some mid 70s. He's got a few 80s. So Keith Gregory scores a little bit higher among among the lawyers that are in the bar. Some of them probably show up in his court. I guess you would have to show up in his court if you're going to make these ratings, because how else are you going to know? And you can see the number of judges or the number of lawyers that have made comments. For Keith Gregory, the number of lawyers that made comments were in the high 300s, 390 something. For Matt Van Sickle, the only comments were made by folks in the around 50. Not a percentage, a hard number of lawyers. Only about 50 lawyers made these comments, so I guess he's not well known. I don't know any more background for this guy. Once again, it's kind of sad. It's their life. It's a big thing that's going to go on in their life, and we don't know that much about them. Anyway, not much difference between them. So we're going to drop down from the Superior Court to a next level down. The court is the District Court. And once again, we are in District 10D. I found a map. Things have been jerked around a little bit in Wake County on judicial districts, and other places around the state too. Things have been jerked around a little bit. This is a map. It's not a very good one of Wake County, but it shows the judicial districts, 10A, 10B, 10C, 10D. What's not good about it is it's low resolution. So if I try to zoom in on it, in fact, it's not cooperating. There we go. If I try to zoom in on it, it just gets fuzzy. You can't see any detail. These are things I don't think anybody knows anything about unless you're, deep in the middle of judicial districts. A few people might know. I don't know. My sample ballot shows that I am voting for judges in District 10D. Now there are 3 seats that are in the election on the ballot. Seat 1 has just 1 candidate, Margaret Phillips Eagles. Seat 2 has 5 candidates. And seat 3 also has just 1 candidate. And I think I had mentioned I have no idea what a seat is. So I did some searching. Google didn't help. I spent well over an hour going down that rabbit hole. Nobody could explain what a seat was, or nobody did, or why 2 of them only have 1 candidate and 1 of them has 5 candidates. Don't know. I asked Reddit for help. I got a partial answer so far. In fact, I haven't gone back over to Reddit to see if anybody has explained that for me anymore. So let's do that live. We'll do it live. See if anybody's told me anything. No, this is the one answer that I got. Somebody told me that a seat was basically just a judge job opening, but he couldn't explain how the candidates got apportioned or decided to run for one seat or another. Well, we can make this, we can push the explicit button. I said, how do candidates get apportioned or decide to run for the individual seats? And the guy who responded to me said, I have no fucking clue. He suspects some internal judicial politicking, but that's just speculation. So I don't know. Don't know why there's 5 candidates for seat 2, only 1 candidate for seat 1 and 1 candidate for seat 3. So, yes, there is a Bar Association judicial performance evaluation for all of these guys. And in the 5-way contest, the one for seat 2, there are some clear preferences. For seat 2 in that 5-way contest, Democrat Rebecca Ann Edwards gets good and excellent ratings, mostly in the 70% range. Independent Nicolette Fulton does better. She's in the mid to upper 80s. Democrat Walter Rand gets good to excellent ratings in the 50s, hovering around 50. So not so good. Republican J. Brian Ratledge is in the low 80s. And there's one more candidate, Evan Charles Schreier. He didn't get enough responses for them to come up with anything in their chart. And so those averages led me to look at the number of lawyers weighing in on the other candidates, and it varied a lot. In this gang of 5, I'll call them the gang of 5, They had between 80 and 100 responses. So 80 to 100 lawyers responded to the survey. Walter Rand got more. He got around 180, but he was not well liked. Put that back up on the screen, see who those folks are. If you look at this uncontested race for seat 1, that's Margaret Phillips Eagles. She got good ratings, and they were from over 400 lawyers. Okay, I don't know what that means, but it seems interesting. I couldn't find any News and Observer endorsements at this level. The Indy Week endorsed Democrat Rebecca Edwards, even though endorsed Rebecca Edwards, even though, let me see, where was I? Brian Ratledge got a little bit better ratings from the lawyers, but they're going with the Democrat. Pinko commies. What am I at next? The nonpartisan offices. Okay, so there are 9. The nonpartisan, we're going to go to Board of Education. There are 9 Board of Education districts in Wake County. Unlike the commissioners, only going to vote for one candidate, or only going to vote for candidates in your own district. So I'm in District 9, it would appear. And I've only got one candidate, Bill Fletcher. There's an option for a write-in. Candidates in 5 of those districts are unopposed, just like mine. And then in the other 4, in one of those, the candidate, Kathleen Hartenstein, died recently. She's still on the ballot, still unopposed. There is a write-in opportunity on all the ballots. If there's no write-in in District 5, no, I don't know what district. I don't know what district she is. Whatever district she's in, if there's no winner, the rest of the board will choose her replacement. There could be a winner based on write-in, so I don't know how that would work. You can review the contested races for the school board, a.k.a. Board of Education, or a.k.a. School Board. So you can view information on all of those in a News and Observer article. Here are the candidates running for Wake County School Board. Again, sorry, this is Wake County centric. We'll get our Durham staff and our Orange County staff on this someday. So they've got the pictures and they've got candidate statements from everybody, but they don't have an endorsement here. News and Observer didn't endorse anybody. Indy Week did. In District 1, Heather Scott. District 3, Sean Pollins. District 5, Jim Martin, not the former governor. District 8, Lindsay Mahaffey. How do you choose? That's what it says here. I'm not even sure what I wrote. Let me find out. If you're wrapped up in education issues, you probably know the candidates. If this is a big deal to you, you probably know who they are. You've already made a choice. The statements in the News and Observer article and in the database are not political. They've all got programs and priorities that they favor, but nothing that I saw was controversial. There's nothing in the election material to indicate who would be a more effective leader. Some of the candidates claim leadership ability. Deeper web searches than I had time to do might dig out more details. They might bring out more controversy. To me, it just doesn't look like there's any bad choices. Anybody that you vote for probably do okay. I apologize for not covering the Board of Education races in the surrounding counties. Once again, we'll put the full Triangle Talk Show staff on this in 2020. That's me. I'm it. All right, so we are down to get over here. The Soil and Water Conservation District Supervisor. You can vote for 2. What the hell do they do? Well, let's find out. This is going to be the WakeGov's website for the Soil and Water Conservation District. When I looked it over, the most interesting thing I found was the map room. I mean, everything else is, there's a lot of stuff there if you're into soil and water. The most interesting thing I found was something called the map room. And I was interested because, it shows stuff from 1949. The map room contains full sets of Wake County aerial photos for 1949, 54, 65. Those would be fascinating, wouldn't they? The maps and photos are not online. You got to go to their office. It's in a room in their district office. Oh, sigh. All right, so the candidates. I have no idea. Well, let me look. Might as well look and see who those candidates are. I can vote for 2. There's 5 of them there. Opportunity for 2 write-ins. I have no idea. I'm glad they're there. I like soil and water. I guess mostly I like water. I want something to stand on too, so soil is important. It's beginning to sound like a laundry detergent commercial. I did find some more interesting stuff here. So this is a nonpartisan election. We don't see party labels next to these guys. But we do, for some of them, here. This is Wake County Dems website. Again, this will be in the TriangleTalkShow.com website here, but it's wakedems.org. They're Wake County candidates, and if we slide down a little bit, well, look, soil and water conservation. There's 2 candidates listed. Nirvana Crew and Jenna Wadsworth. So, again, going back to the ballot, I get my cursor here. There's Nirvana Crew. There's Jenna Austin Wadsworth. So you could put a D next to those names because they're Democrats. They're right there on the wakedems.org website. And Nirvana Crew has gotten an endorsement from the Sierra Club, and Jenna Wadsworth has gotten an endorsement from Indie Week and the Sierra Club. And News and Observer has not done endorsements yet. Okay. I know. Soil and water. Somebody at Indie Week has dug even deeper into this. Because they're all about the earth. And they have endorsed Ian McMillan and Jenna Wadsworth for Wake County Soil and Water Conservation District Supervisor. Okay, let's go back to the ballot. Yeah, there's Ian McMillan. He's on the ballot, and he has got the he's got the endorsement of the independent. So Sierra Club, they've just popped up here in the show. I was looking for more information, maybe a party affiliation for Ian McMillan. That's how I stumbled on the Sierra Club endorsement. And it turns out the Sierra Club has endorsed candidates for a lot of North Carolina elections. So let's go check out the Sierra Club. There's the North Carolina version. Of course, they're nationwide. I don't know, worldwide? I don't know. Anyway, nationwide at least. But here's their North Carolina stuff. And so they're picking folks in the U.S. House of Representatives. They don't list a party affiliation here, but I think it's mostly Democrats. The judicial election, they pick Anita Earls for the Supreme Court. They weigh in on the constitutional amendments. We'll talk about them in a minute. They weigh in on the state Senate and the state House, every district. Local board races in a bunch of counties, so kind of dig down to Wake here. And they even get down to the Soil and Water Conservation District because they are the Sierra Club. And they endorse Nirvana Crew and Ian McMillan. So add the Sierra Club. The research job for who to vote for just got harder. Okay, so who is this Ian McMillan guy? I'm not sure why I'm focusing on him, but it seems I want to know party affiliations. So let me try to control my computer and check him out. He's got a website. There he is, Ian McMillan, running for Soil and Water. Lists who he is and where he stands and a lot of stuff about him. Doesn't give a party affiliation. What he says seems, pretty generic and businesslike and generally professional. So, I feel like I'm picking on him now because I haven't done this for anybody else. But, this is just kind of interesting. This is practice research. Okay, Ian, I'm going to look up I want to know your party. I'm going to look up your voting record. So here we go. Ian. I don't know his initial. It's Macmillan, McMillian. Could be Macmillan even. I don't know when he was born. He is in Wake County. So choose Wake. And this is this is that same voter search that I did for myself a little bit earlier. You can do it for anybody. See what comes up. No, wait. No results found. Okay, so I know I had results before, so I must have spelled something wrong. That doesn't look like it. McMillian. Maybe I'll just do a sounds like. Okay, so there we go. And there's two. There's an Ian Johnson McMillian and an Ian Alexander McMillian. The Johnson is in Raleigh. They're both in Wake County. So I'm not sure. If it's the Ian Johnson McMillian, then he's a Democrat. And if it's the Ian Alexander McMillian, he's a Republican. I think he's the Democrat. I'm not sure. It seems the last search I did just picked out one of them. It was a Democrat, but now I can't tell. Live television. Okay, so among the soil and water folks, the folks that are soiled and watered, I don't think there's a bad choice. There isn't a super educated choice either. And once again, these people all live full, rich lives like you and me. There's a lot of detail in their jobs that we will never know anything about. And yet, we will vote for one and not the other. We'll make a big difference in their lives. And now I just feel guilty about that. Maybe I can go interview Ian or one of these guys and see what they say about that. Find out what that really means. Once again, they know what they're getting into going into an election like that. They know that on the ballot, no one is going to know who the heck they are. And most people probably won't vote for them at all. Won't vote for anyone at that level of the ballot. So a small number of people will determine what they're going to do with the next couple of years of their life. Are we done yet? No, we're not. We're not. We got a ways to go. We got the constitutional amendment. We got those 6 constitutional amendments. Widen out here, we can see a little bit more of them. I am so over them. I am voting no on all 6. There's only one that I'm even waffling about. That's the Marsy's Law. Let's let me find that. There we go. It's up on the screen. That would be the Victims' Rights Amendment. And by the way, there are no titles on any of the amendments that are here. If you're looking at the screen, it would just say Constitutional Amendment. And some of the descriptions are deliberately misleading, can be deceptive. The Marsy's Law description is not misleading. It's a constitutional amendment to strengthen protections for victims of crime, to establish certain absolute basic rights for victims, and to ensure the enforcement of these rights. That's what it says. That is what you will see on your ballot. Won't say Marsy's Law, won't say specifically victims' rights, just that phrase, to establish certain absolute basic rights for victims. That's what it will say. I'm waffling because the arguments that people have made against it didn't sound very solid to me. Things like it'll take more court time, it'll cost more court money, some victims' rights are already in the law. The amendment goes farther. I am voting no. I'm voting no because I don't want it to be a constitutional amendment. I think that ties the legislature's hands too much. They can't make any changes without going back to the voters to change the amendment. And although this issue is important, it's not important enough to be in the Constitution. You know what occurs to me? I've never read the state constitution. It may be full of nitpicky little crap. Not to say that Marsy's Law is nitpicky crap. Just not constitution worthy. On the other hand, maybe we do now and then need to get a club and beat the legislature about the head a little bit to get some things done sometimes. Okay, so I want to apologize to Kelsey Grammer, a.k.a. Fraser, who recorded a bunch of commercials for Marsy's Law for the amendment and put them on YouTube. And stick it over here and start it over again.
I'm Kelsey Grammer. My dad was gunned down at home at the age of 38. 6 years later, my sister Karen was brutally raped and murdered. She was 18. When my father's killer was released and allowed to live out his days in freedom, we were never told. I found out through the National Enquirer. It seemed like a cruel joke. In my sister's case, I have been allowed a voice in the parole hearings of her killers. They remain in jail to this day. Marsy's Law for All assures equal rights for victims and their families to be informed and heard before criminals can be paroled. I urge you to support Marsy's Law.
Okay, thank you, Fraser. That was the generic ad. He has made a bunch more. He's made one for North Carolina.
I'm Kelsey Grammer. My dad was gunned down at his home at the age of 38. 6 years later, my sister Karen was brutally raped and murdered. She was 18. When my father's killer was released, I found out through the National Enquirer. It seemed like a cruel joke. In my sister's case, I've been allowed a voice in the parole hearings of her killers. But that's not always true in North Carolina. Marcy's Law for North Carolina gives crime victims and their families a voice in the process and the equal rights they deserve. Please vote yes on Marcy's Law.
So just a version of the same commercial that he did for the generic version. Got a bunch more states too. I'm going to just play one more. This is the one from Ohio.
I'm Kelsey Grammer. My dad was gunned down at home at the age of 38. 6 years later, my sister Karen was brutally raped and murdered. She was 18. When my father's killer was released and allowed to live out his days in freedom, we were never told. I found out through the National Enquirer. It seemed like a cruel joke. In my sister's case, I have been allowed a voice in the parole hearings of her killers. They remain in jail to this day. Marcy's Law for Ohio assures equal rights for victims and their families to be informed and heard before criminals can be paroled. I urge you to support Marcy's Law.
That was for Ohio, but did I miss it? Did he say Ohio? I was too busy listening to his voice. He's got a great voice. There's another one in Kentucky and the one in Illinois. The ads are heartfelt. He is a really good celebrity spokesman. And I don't know, maybe it does need to be an amendment. Marcy's Law got swept up in the Republican amendment fever of this election where they stuffed so many in just trying to get conservatives to come to the polls. So, maybe just like too bad for them. But it is too bad for them. It's easier for the folks that oppose all of the constitutional amendments to just say nix all six and not complicate things. So the Marcy's Law, there are some reasons not to. There may be some reasons to make it a constitutional amendment. I think it would be better off just being a law if we could get our legislature, and basically an improvement to the laws we've got, because there are some, if we could get our legislature to actually do something about it. I don't know. Okay, what's left? Bond issues. Okay. Again, I'm just talking Wake County. We got school bonds, college bonds, parks and greenway bonds. This is how we make some of our public boards beg for money. It helps the legislature, county board members, city council members. It helps them keep their hands clean, so they're not trying to pick your pocket. Some of them announce support for the bonds at their peril, because they'll get negative ads against them. He voted to tax you, to increase your taxes. We voters do. Oh, okay. So we voters dig into the need for extra money. I wrote something badly here. I don't know what I was trying to say. Do we buy into the need for extra money? I guess is what I'm trying to say. Are there alternative ways to raise the money if it's needed? I don't know. Do we watch? Oh, I see. Okay. Take two. I see where we're going. Do we voters dig into the need for extra money? Do we analyze it? Do we understand the stories? Do we look at alternative ways to raise the money if it is needed? And pretty much no, we don't. Do we watch or read news stories about them and really get the details? Well, I don't know. Not me. Usually they get approved. Not always, but usually they do. Most of us say we support education. We support parks and greenways. I love my bike paths. Who opposes them? Well, it's typically conservatives and sort of a generic opposition to higher taxes. The bond issues raise property taxes a little bit. I read one column about a school board, Wake County School Board, about them wasting money tearing down a school that was not that old to build a new one. But what are the details of that decision? I don't know. We have rapid growth in this area. We have had for several decades. I got here in 1990, was starting to grow pretty heavily then. We need more schools. We need more parks. I have wondered why the new property taxes from the new people, all the new people are moving in. They buy property or rent property. They pay taxes on that property. Why doesn't that pay for the new schools? Well, it can't all at once, collect enough money in 1 year from the folks that have moved in to built a new school that might be needed for that, for that group of people. Eventually they do. But then the need for more continues and more people move in. Usually we approve them again. We don't exactly know why. We don't exactly know what the alternatives might be. It's really not that much each time, few bucks, 100 more bucks on your $500,000 house. Maybe if we had to write a check for the extra amount at the voting booth, maybe things would be different. I don't know. Maybe. I don't think they should. The News and Observer and Indie Week have both recommended approval. And we're done. Yay. Okay, almost. One last thing. We are constantly being bombarded by political advertising as this election approaches. Boy, aren't we on TV? I guess on radio. I don't know. I don't listen to commercial radio much anymore. And in social media. Allegedly in social media. I don't hang out there much either. I see some of it on Facebook. I don't see what everyone's talking about. I don't see the Russian ads. Mostly what I see is the ads on local TV, on the news. Political ads don't inform you of anything useful. The goal is to energize the base and maybe sway some uncommitted voters. What is an uncommitted voter? Sometimes also called a low information voter. Well, if you're one, you don't pay a lot of attention to politics. You probably don't even like politics. You don't like all the lying, all the mudslinging. You don't like how difficult it is to get simple, honest information and answers, the kinds of things I alluded to earlier. If you even care, and you probably do care, who has the time? I spent all day yesterday, all day today, coming up with this pretty basic look at local elections. I've never done that before. I've never done it for myself. I usually vote, even in primaries in the off year. Usually when I get to races that I'm not familiar with, I just skip them. Don't vote for anybody. I don't guess. I just don't vote. I'm often voting pretty much a party line. We don't have a party line checkbox in North Carolina anymore. That disappeared a few years ago. So now you do have to go office by office. But I vote pretty much a party line. I do pay attention to the endorsements that I can find. There is a pretty good chance that you, a disengaged voter, don't even vote. Don't even go to the polls, especially in an off-year election. That's a year when there's not a presidential election. And this year especially, again, no governor, no senator. They call this a blue moon election. It happens, about every 12 years or so. No president, no governor, no senator. The major offices and candidates are easy to pick. Those candidates for those major offices are easier to pick, easier to make a decision on. There's still people that don't. Were there people that were trying to decide, Clinton or Trump? I'm not sure. Sure, yeah, there were. There were people that voted for Obama and then voted for Trump. That doesn't make any sense to me, but there are people that did that, and many of them had reasons. Okay, so I spent the last 2 days for myself, so I would know who I was going to vote for all the way through the ballot. And I decided to share it with you, and that's part of why I started this podcast in the first place, to get myself to do things like that and to put them out here. Now, Triangle Talk Show is a very small-time operation. There's no research staff. There's me and my computer and the internet, and there was way more information out there than I had time to find, much less process. So this voter guide is not perfect, but it's better than leaving the ballot empty or not voting at all. Okay, you go vote. And I got to go find out why Megyn Kelly got dumped by NBC. Get my Wirecast thing back up here again. Turn sincerely to the camera and say, over and out.